Welcome to Music Matters Podcast with Darrell Craig Harris, talking about all things music with celebrities, artists, music business insiders, and more. Mr. Will Wood, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. I love your background there. That looks very homey with the piano. You got everything going on.
Thank you very much.
So you,
But I make do.
awesome. Yeah. So you just came off of a sort of a sabbatical, I guess you would say, for a year. You're coming into a 10th anniversary tour, Mr. Wood is Dead tour, which is going to be a mix of live concert venues and theaters. Some use solo, some with the band. So tell me what you've been up to, because I know we talked a while ago on your last album release. Tell me what you've been up to since then.
Well, what have I been up to? You know, when I first did my big dramatic hiatus thing, I spent some time just refusing to even acknowledge being Will Wood. You know, I decided I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to act as if none of it ever happened. And really during that period, I was considering all kinds of different options. I was thinking about going back to school and studying something, a totally different field. I was thinking about, shaving my head, getting a nose job, moving out to the Midwest, and having everybody call me Billy, So there was a period of time where it was really just about healing, so to speak, for lack of less dramatic phrasing. And then slowly but steadily, I started taking on more and more projects that were not related to my work as singer-songwriter Will Wood, but were creative nonetheless for just personal fulfillment. It turns out I need a hobby. And
yeah, it's hard when your music is your profession and your hobby, right? Because you never get away from it.
Right, that was the thing. I was doing a lot with the podcast Life in the World to Come with Chris Dunn. And I directed a music video for a friend's band. And just as time went on, I found myself more and more just feeling like, I guess this is what I do. And it's what I do whether I like it or not, and almost, whether it's a career, whether it's, whether I even publish what I make. Making things it's just kind of how I'm wired. It's how I respond to difficult times. It's how I cope with life, and it's also just like my biggest source of personal fulfillment and entertainment. So over time, I got more and more involved with various creative projects. And so the hiatus, or whatever you want to call it, sabbatical, break, whatever, I really at the beginning thought it might be forever. It really might be. It might be a year. It might be 10 years. It might be for the rest of my life. But as time went on, it's just I couldn't stay away, So by the end of the hiatus period, I was starting to get ready to go back to being singer-songwriter Will Wood. And so I spent the last couple months of it preparing for a tour. And my last tour, the Slouching Towards Bethlehem tour, which happened between October and December of last year, was really, it was a really big part of, I don't know how to put it, but, ask what I've been up to, I guess I would say it's that. It was focusing on that project. And now that tour is over, I'm working on the film version of it. We filmed the whole tour so that we could put it out as a movie, so to speak. Almost a concert film, almost a stand-up special, because my solo performances they're a little hard to describe for people who haven't been to them, but, they're a combination of like stand-up, I guess, storytelling, some drama, and the songs. So, I've been working on that, and just kind of working on getting my ducks in a row. There was a mess behind the scenes, all of the minutia, the legal crap,
just life stuff.
just like, this industry is bizarre, and there are always little fires to put out, and always, standards to try and keep up with. And so, a lot of it is, for lack of a better word, bookkeeping. I know that implies like financial bookkeeping, but I just mean, getting my, getting things straight. So I've been busy for a little while.
Yeah, so you've been doing you have a solo show that you do, and then you also have a band show. So how is that different for you? Like you is it a different vibe when you're doing it by yourself? I assume obviously it would be, but what do you really like about doing the solo versus band, or how does that work for you?
Um, they're such different things. They're kind of different art forms because the solo shows are really their theater in a way. Whereas the band shows are they're just rock concerts. And so it is a totally different approach for sure. I've always mostly towards solo. The band hasn't played other than like a one-off we did almost as a rehearsal for upcoming tour plans a few months ago. We hadn't played together since 2020, and at that point hadn't toured at all since like 2018.
Oh wow.
Even with that, I use the word tour very loosely because back then it really was just, getting into a minivan, putting a U-Haul on the back, and, playing three shows in a weekend in three different towns. And that was
Right.
so this is kind of our first time touring. So to a certain extent, I what it entails is new. It's a very new sort of thing, and so the experience, I'm excited to really dig my fingers into it and really figure out like really kind of figure out how to do it in a way. So the vibe is very different. With the band, it's a high energy. There are sometimes mosh pits. Um,
Hey, we like a good mosh pit.
what's up?
I said we love a good mosh pit.
Yeah, no, and they seem to really enjoy it too. But with the solo shows, it's closer. It's closer to a piece of theater. So I have to spend a lot of time writing and rehearsing, and making sure that what I do is it has something of an arc to it, and that I'm able to create something that I'm satisfied really putting my all into. And so they're entirely different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, and I love the music. The people actually who haven't heard your music that are first getting an introduction to you. How would you classify your music, or is there a way to classify it? Because it's a mix of a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of mess around, kind of instinctively. I just kind of I don't know. I play around with genre quite a bit, and to a certain extent, I kind of feel like that's my whole thing, you know?
Right? Yeah.
And so it's hard to say what my genre is just because the genre, the not having a set genre is kind of the point of the genre.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And people like to classify people, but it's really cool what you do. And that's
thank-
part of the reason, a big reason actually why you've been so successful. I mean, you have over 1 million streams a month, which is no easy feat in this world of all so much noise and artists out there. It's an amazing thing that you've really found your own lane, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very fortunate. I got really lucky, and uh, it's I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, I just consider myself a singer-songwriter, and I know that as a genre, singer-songwriter tends to imply dude with an acoustic guitar,
Right. Exactly.
but you know, uh, in my case, it's just kind of like I don't know. The genre is whatever I feel like playing,
Yeah,
which
and that's awesome. And again, like you found your own thing, which is it's hard, right? Because it's there's so much noise out there for there's so much releases coming out at us all the time that to find your own thing and to find your own style is really it's hard and challenging, but it's important as an artist. Do you kind of think that that's true, or what's your feeling on that?
oh, I don't know. In some ways, messing around with genre as much as I do, it it might be an obstacle depending on, I don't know. I see the thing is I don't feel like it doesn't feel like a conscious choice to me. It feels like this is what happens regardless of what I want. because I don't want to get all like, you know, lofty or whatever and talking about inspiration or whatever. But like,
Right.
when it comes down to it, like the things that inspire me, they change a lot, and my interests musically change a lot. And if I don't really feel inspired to pursue a sound that I'm interested in, the song just, I never finish it. Um, and so it kind of just happens whether I like it or not. So when it comes down to it, like, is it an obstacle? That would depend on what the goal is.
Hmm.
And my goal has never been to, be famous or be rich or any of the things that I think a lot of people get into
Hmm.
music in the hopes of accomplishing. I mean, like, you know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fun to be had, but, ultimately, I do it because it's what moves me and it's because it's what I love and also the only job I've ever been able to hold down. So
Yeah, I can relate.
I remember the last job I had, I think, was I was a server at a Greek restaurant, and one day it was a slow day, and I was still messing everything up because I was terrible at serving. And the manager, she looked at me, and she was so exhausted with my shit at this point. Like she hated me at this point. And she said, "You know what? You don't have to be here if you don't want to." And I just said, okay. And I took off my apron and I handed it to her and I walked out. That is my experience with normal jobs. And so, this it's kind of just what I do. And so I don't know. I don't know whether or not it's benefited me because I don't know what I would consider the benefit other than, personal fulfillment. I mean, maybe that's easy for me to say as somebody who's had some success. Um,
Yeah,
but
I think you hit on the fact that too, like if you're trying to create music to become rich and famous, that's just such a not a great path because you're not going to you may achieve that, but you're not going to be fulfilled as an artist, right?
maybe, I mean, some people, their instinct is just to write, straight punk rock music, and if that's what inspires them, then that's what they should do.
Right.
And maybe messing around with genre helped me stick out, yeah. But but I also think it would be an obstacle to me having more mainstream success.
Mm.
And that doesn't bother me at all. That's never been my goal. So
Yeah, and you've been successful, and like I said, you've created your own lane, which is really awesome. How important is storytelling in your music? Because it seems like it's really important.
um, it kind of depends because there have been times where I've sought to tell a story with a song, but there have been a lot of times where the songwriting process was this once again, it's getting back to that lofty artist shit, but like it's just sometimes the song writes me, man,
Well,
it,
sometimes it does. Yeah.
yeah, it's I sit down at the piano with some idea or feeling in my head and I kind of just let stuff come out. And by the end of it, it's something that maybe isn't a story, but hopefully has some kind of arc to it that I think in a lot of ways can resemble a story. So I don't know if storytelling is necessarily a big part of my conscious songwriting process, but it is a big part of what I do on stage. Storytelling is a major focus of my solo performances, and but that's like actually like standing up there and telling you a story, not singing a story.
Right.
There are outliers. I've got that song Tomcat Disposables, which is very much literally a story about a mouse, but otherwise, a lot of it is kind of just an abstract, feeling it out sort of thing. How do I take people on something that, how do I take people on a journey, man? I don't know. I can't say anything
Yeah.
without feeling like I have to make fun of myself while saying it, but there you go.
Yeah, you know what? It's hard to talk about yourself too because as an artist, you kind of do what you do. You don't sit there. If you self-analyze, you'll drive yourself nuts, right?
Mm,
If you get so into yourself, it's hard to get past it.
yeah.
Tell me about tour life and that, and also crowdfunding. I know crowdfunding has been a big part of your story and your early success.
Um, well, I would say that I don't expect myself to do any crowdfunding again anytime soon.
Mhm.
The last crowdfunding I did ended up being like so difficult to stay on top of because, I set a goal in the hopes that maybe I can raise this much and I'll be able to pay for some of the record with that. And then I ended up raising a lot more than that. But in order to, make good on what I was promising people with that campaign, I then had to take on more responsibilities than I, was prepared to. And I had to hire more people. And eventually it came down to it's almost like I would have got better funding by making less money. It's, you know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah, less hassle, right?
yeah, and also just like by the end of it, the amount of money that I had to record was not, it was still compared to how much I raised, still pretty small. And don't get me wrong, like I'm incredibly grateful for the support that I received. And I definitely couldn't have done what I ended up doing without that campaign. But I'm in a position now where I feel like if I were to, get into studio, I'd probably pay out of pocket and just, you know, go for broke. Just because, I feel less, I also feel less obligation artistically that way. I also feel like, there are things that like I want to do that if I had gotten fans to pay for, I'd be like, that doesn't feel right to do to them. It's weird. It creates a
Yeah, because you feel a lot of responsibility in that situation. Yeah, and that's you know what, that's cool that you do, because a lot of people do crowdfunding, and like you said, it's you got to follow up on the back end. So it's making sure that you really give back to the fans, like you mentioned about thanking them for the support and that kind of thing.
well, yeah, and it's just kind of like when you feel that sense of responsibility to your fans, it's not great for someone like me who has just like a natural contrarian streak that I just cannot help. When I get the sense that my audience is making a demand that doesn't align with my artistic instincts, there's like a little voice inside my head that I have to like shove down that's going like do the opposite. And so, you
And
know,
the angel and the devil on your
right,
shoulder.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think at this point, I probably don't see myself continuing to do much crowdfunding just because
Mhm.
it's a lot, and at this point in my career, I don't need it as badly.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's great, and that's a great place to be.
yeah,
What do you do in terms of songwriting? Are you always writing? Is that like is it a daily thing, or is it just when inspiration hits you, or how does that work for you?
yeah, it's whenever it happens, it happens. I don't feel very in control of it, which is one of the reasons why in most cases, actually it's not the case. I was about to say in most cases there's been a long gap between my albums, but that's just not true. My first two albums came out within a year of each other, and then my last two albums came out within like 2 years of each other. Um, so that's not that crazy, but there was like a 4 year gap between my second and third album, which, to me feels like that's probably more like that's probably more what I'm wired for. Is
Mm.
I'm probably one of those artists who probably isn't going to put something out for a long time between them. The only reason the shorter gaps happened is because of circumstance. And I had to like really make a very focused effort in that moment. I prefer, I think, to kind of spread out, let things come to me, and let life kind of happen in a way that makes it so that 3 years later I find, oh, I have a whole album and it's about my life for the past few years.
Yeah, and that's more authentic anyway. You don't feel like you're forced. I guess that's the advantage of being an indie artist, but you don't have that expectation from a large label. Like I've got to put an album out, even because that a lot of bands they have the first big album, and then the second album suffers because they only have a year. They had their whole life to write the first album, then they have a year or 6 months to write the second. And do you feel like is it nice not to have that kind of pressure?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, there's also the other side, and that is that sometimes I work better under pressure in a way.
Mm.
The constraints that you're in and the circumstances you're in when you're working on any creative project, sometimes, that can kind of be the necessity that serves as the mother of invention. And so, it can be beneficial to have, somebody behind me kind of going like, go, go, go.
Pushing.
But like for the most part, I think that I think that it's best to have some time and just to let kind of inspiration or whatever run the show, because I think what comes out as a result of it, I don't know if it's more authentic, but it is, but I do think it gets kind of more, it gets bigger. And,
Hmm.
while my last album was a very long album, it was very small. Like I feel like its focus was very small. And it was very personal, very day-to-day private life stuff, which can also be good. But I don't know, I'm kind of babbling at this point, but I guess my main point is like, yeah, I think I'd like to take longer.
Yeah. Well, it's good. And you know what? You're
Um,
yeah, it's where it's meaningful for you. You're not just putting out stuff, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, Tell me about, well, actually, you've been doing this a long time, and especially as a really successful indie artist. What are some of the things that you've really learned along the way? Like, there's a couple of really good bullet points that you would tell younger artists that want to get started and that kind of thing.
Um, you know, I don't really know um how much I can how much advice I could give someone that's very practical. Um, I would say that there's plenty of more, I don't know if abstract's the right word, but less practical stuff that I would want to say to younger artists getting into it. But I feel like some of them are kind of a bummer. There's like,
No, but you know what? It's important because it's good for people to have a full picture of what it is, you know?
well, yeah, I want to be honest, and there's part of me that just feels like I'm obligated to say follow your dreams, but there's also a part of me that says like don't. Like unless you love doing it, and I mean really love doing it, it don't, because you're not going to be happy with it. There, all of my dreams came true, and I am not happier for it.
Mm.
And that's not, I don't believe that's because of something fundamentally wrong with me. I think that that's just how people are. That's how we're kind of wired. That whatever we experience, and no matter how good things get, I think that I'm getting kind of out there right now, but I think that people are wired to develop dissatisfaction with their life circumstances, regardless of what they are. I think that's the reason why you have billionaires rocketing off into space, because they reached a point where they needed to rocket off into space in order to be happy. You
Right. They thought they were going to get their billions and that was going to do it for them. And they find out that's not it.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of drawbacks to what I do. I mean, I left for a pretty decent amount of time, and I think that kind of serves as evidence. Like when it came down to it, it's like, yeah, now I can make a good living and I can live comfortably on that. But back when I was broke and my house was falling apart, I was enjoying it more.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, so I guess generally what I would say to younger people is make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to find fulfillment in applause or adulation or the hero worship that success sometimes brings you in this field. If you think that that's going to make you happy or fill something in your heart, or that position is going to make you feel satisfied with yourself or anything like that, search your feelings and be sure that you're doing it for the love of the work itself, because otherwise you're going to be particularly unhappy.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I had to rediscover during my hiatus is, what is it about this that I really love? Is it the career or is it the music? And
Right.
I needed to rediscover my love of the music in the face of some of the difficulties of the career.
Yeah, and those are important points. I don't think they're a bummer. I think that's just reality. If you're a person that has issues or is unfulfilled, thinking that success is going to solve that for you that's not a good path.
Yeah.
Because there's some very successful people that I've even worked with that you find out like it didn't do it for them. They still got to
And
they have
and
to you have to find a way to make yourself happy no matter what you're doing. If it's music, if it's life, right?
yeah, and I think that like people, they might not even be conscious that that's what they're doing, which is why I say, like, really dig into your guts and make sure that's not what you're doing, that you're not trying to find something that will solve the problem that is you.
Hmm.
If you think that's gonna help, it's not gonna help. And so I think that I've experienced a little bit of both. That there was part of me that was looking for fulfillment in an audience and had to then eventually realize that no, dude, it's not out there. You know, the next round of applause isn't going to be a thing that finally makes you go, "Oh, okay, I am good enough."
Yeah,
You
exactly.
need to, you need to go into it knowing that there is no good enough. You're never going to be good enough for yourself. You're always going to be your own worst critic, and you're always going to, have some amount of dissatisfaction with just life. And so, you need to know for sure that the process is fulfilling for you.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just appreciating the small moments and the small victories,
Yeah.
and it's like it's just a process. You never fully arrive. That's what I found for myself too. You think like, oh, this is gonna fix my unhappiness. Like, no, you got to fix that, and then keep doing what you're doing, and just keep
Right.
pushing on. Right.
Yeah.
You have a couple of things that you are very interested in, and I wanted to mention it because I read that on your bio about giving back and helping with animals, and I know you have quite a cat collection and some really you want to talk a little bit about that because I think there's a foundation also that you support.
When I was on tour, my crew and I stumbled across a colony of stray cats that had been dumped in an abandoned construction site next to the hotel we were staying at in South Carolina. And the cats were so friendly and so affectionate and so trusting of people because the employees at the hotel had taken to feeding them regularly. And so you could sit by the fence that walled off the construction site and they would just come up to you and they were very friendly. And so my girlfriend who sells my merch and like helps out with a million
Mm.
different things. She's like, you know, everything. She does fucking everything. She was able to she was able to get a hold of one of the cats. And there was one other cat that was missing an eye that we wanted to try and get to, but we weren't able to. And much to my tour manager's chagrin, we insisted on smuggling this, like, who knows, month-old kitten back to New Jersey in our tour bus. And so we got home, we started getting attached to the cat, and then we learned that the construction site was set to be bulldozed and that colony was going to be in danger. And Lord knows they were already living pretty rough lives and not
Right.
particularly safe out there. Some of them had scars on their bodies from God knows what. Apparently, some of them were being targeted by hawks. And, you know, it wasn't safe down there. And so we decided we're going to go back there and see how many more we can rescue. And we set a bunch of traps and we caught 7, including that one with the one eye. And so actually 8. We caught 8. I don't know. It was tough.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was freezing. I had unwittingly and unintentionally gone off my meds as we were on the road.
Perfect
On our way
timing.
yeah. On the way to South Carolina, I'm like, where are my? Oh, geez. And so, you know, it was a lot. And one of the cats, you know, we got them all trapped. We loaded them up in my station wagon, and the car kept breaking down on the way back. The engine broke down. We had to call AAA. Not the engine, the battery died, and we couldn't get it jumped. And the AAA guy had to come and jump us. And then, like, a few miles later, it happened again. Meanwhile, one of these cats has clawed its way through the cardboard box we were keeping it in and lodged itself underneath the steering wheel up inside the guts of the car. And so it was a
Wow.
big deal. But now I have 7 stray cats in a room in this house. We just call it the cat room because there's nothing else in that room but cats. And yeah, we are looking for homes for them. We do work with Atlantic Critter Rescue, and you know, they're helping out with the adoption process.
Awesome.
You know, we don't have like a foundation of our own. It's just we're just trying to find some
Make
homes for the
Yeah, make a difference. I'm a cat person, so I read that story. I was like, oh, I got to ask him about that.
Oh yeah, do you have cats?
Well, I did. I'm in a little apartment right now, so I want to. When we get into a house, then I'd love to have a cat and a dog. It's just with the apartment life, I want to have make it where it's fair for them. But that speaks a lot to your soul, though, that you're willing to do that kind of thing.
I like animals. Listen, not to put you on the spot while you're being recorded, but if you're looking for cats, I've got 7.
You just happen to have one or 7.
I have so many fucking cats.
I could have my official. Would you sign my cat? I have my official
sign
wood cat. Get him a little cat shirt or something. Hey, Will, how can people find you online? Because I know you've got your tour coming up, and they can get the dates and all that kind of stuff. How can they find you?
So you can go to yoinkoftheyukon.com, and that will direct you to willwood.net. And that's where you can get the tickets.
Okay, and I'll put the links in the podcast episode so everybody can find you. And you got your social. What's your social media? It's at Willwood.
At Willwood Official on Instagram.
Official. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. We had a great chat way back when. That was almost 3 years ago. I'm now up to I think it's 106th episode.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so it's been moving along. But thank you so.
The last podcast I did, it was kind of a similar thing. They were like, "Yeah, we've had like 100 and something episodes since the last time we had you." Yeah, it's been a while. It's a pleasure to be back.
Well, it's awesome. Yeah. And definitely when you guys get ready to release your next album, please let me know and we'll come back and talk about that as well. But thank you so much. Yeah. And give the cats a hug for me.
Will do.
But, thank you also to your publicist, Suzanne, awesome lady. So
yeah, she's great.
All right. Great. Have a great day, Will.
You too. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and please consider subscribing to our podcast and follow us on our social media pages for guest announcements.